These visions, they won't
This is
stop.
John MACKO from Fifth Angel, and you are listening to Sonic Perspective.
Hi, this is Ken Mary, and you're listening to Sonic Perspectives.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another interview of Sonic Perspectives. I'm Rodrigo, and my guests today are two members of the band Fifth Angel, drummer Ken Mary and bass player John MACKO. Guys, thank you for joining me, and I'll do my best to alternate between the two of you with my questions, okay?
Sounds great.
Yeah, well, let me start by asking John about the fourth album, When Angels Kill, which came out on June 16th. To me, it's your most ambitious album to date. I don't know if you agree with that statement or not, but can you comment on that?
That was for John, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, it was very ambitious. We were taking a little bit of we're not exactly sure yet, but yeah, we're taking a little bit of a gamble because of the because of the concept of the double album. And yeah, we're rolling the dice a little bit because we're not really sure how that's going to be perceived, especially in this day and age, when people have such a short attention span, for listening. So,
Yeah.
the big question for us is, are the fans or are new listeners going to take the time, to really sink into this record and listen to it, without getting bored or skipping, from one song to the end of the record type of things. So yeah, we're not sure. And so yeah, we're hopeful that people will take that time to really enjoy it, read the lyrics and kind of develop a sense for what the story, is going to bring.
Yeah, and I've seen people, already go up that hill of, let me just listen to the singles or just standalone tracks. And I've seen people overcoming that and going back to the full album format. So I'm a case of that. I like to listen to full albums, but yeah, we'll see what the future holds for sure. Yeah. So, Ken, there's some great drumming throughout the album, and we're going to talk about some of those standout moments. But right off the bat, there's a 60-second intro called Descend into Darkness that segues into the first single, When Angels Kill, where the drums really are in your face. It's almost like you're doing an elevator pitch and saying, "Hi, I'm Ken, and I'm a metal drummer" on that intro, right?
Well, I don't know if it was that so much as we were just trying to really put a beginning to the record that sort of sets the tone for the rest of the album. The song is called Descent into Darkness. It's a short piece, but there's a lot of orchestration. There's a lot of aggressive drums. And really what we were trying to do is just set the mood, for the album, which, the album is the world is descending into darkness. And, we're basically trying to convey that image and that feeling. And I think the piece was very good in terms of doing that.
Yeah, for sure. And John, that was a great video you did for the first single. That kind of treatment can easily fall into a kind of a self-parody territory, but you guys did a great job on it. And it's the same theme throughout the three singles. Can you comment on that?
And I'm sorry, the question one more time.
Just comment on the videos that you guys made. It's the three Seagulls. Yeah, same kind of treatment.
Yeah. Well, the first two, we're done with a green screen, backdrop, and then the third one that just came out, was a live performance. So we had kind of a limited amount of time, because we're kind of all spread out all over the country here. So we kind of had to, everybody had, a lot of people had to fly in, and we really had to utilize the time. So we're, really trying to, get as much, footage as, done as we possibly could. So it just kind of makes sense. to do some, video shots with the green screen so that, we can actually put things together. Ken was really orchestrative in kind of, as far as like the backgrounds and all that. That was really kind of more his vision on those first two singles. And then Immortal, we obviously just wanted, kind of more like an old school, hey, here's the band type of thing.
Right. Yeah. And well, the third one that you mentioned, We Are Immortal, I think it's kind of built to be played live and sung by the crowd. Was it designed this way or just how it came out?
Ken wrote that song, so I'll let him answer that question.
Yeah, well, the thing we want to do, I think, on all the Fifth Angel albums, there's one item that's consistent, whether it's When Angels Kill or whether it's Third Secret or whether it's the self-titled Fifth Angel or whether it's Time Will Tell. All those albums have these big choruses that people sing along. And when we just played the Kit Festival, it was really exciting because, we're hearing the crowd sing along to every single song we had. They were singing along to every single song, including the new song. So, that is something that was intentional. I mean, the reason we're doing that is because we kind of feel like that's one of the key components of Fifth Angel. Like if all of a sudden we started writing songs and they didn't have those sing-along choruses, then it's probably not going to be a Fifth Angel record. So yes, it was intentional. That was the one. I mean, we do want to move forward. We want to progress. We've all become better musicians. We want to show some of that a little bit. We're a little more progressive. We're maybe a little more aggressive as well. But at the same time, I think we did want to retain, for our older fans and for newer fans, this is sort of what this band is about, is those hooky choruses.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, if I may comment on the lyrical content, the brilliance of it is that it works well with whichever political side you take nowadays, liberal or conservative. A song like Resist the Tyrant, for example, could be referring to either side of the political spectrum, right?
Sure. Well, we definitely try to not get political. I mean, I think, when bands try to say, you should do this, or you should vote this way, or you should believe this, I think that's a real problem. We're trying to make art. We're not trying to make political statements. We're just trying to make music that people hopefully enjoy. And in this case, we tried to present an exciting story that really wove all of the concepts, like what we were talking about in our first three albums. If you go back and listen to some of the ideas and concepts, we were talking about deception in media. We were talking about war. We were talking about betrayal. We were talking about terrorism. So we're talking about all these different things over these records. And what the idea here was to weave them into one consistent story that basically wraps up. And there's a lot of little Easter eggs in When Angels Kill, where we will refer to a title or we will refer to a lyric. And you can actually go back to the other albums and listen to those songs and get an even better idea of what's actually going on in the story, which I don't think anybody's done before, that I know of anyway.
Yeah, I don't think so. Not on a full album, not to the scale that you guys did on this one. But yeah, pretty cool. Yeah. And John, I have a question for you about the artwork, which had quite an upgrade from the previous album, and it explores the duality of human nature here, the angelic side and the dark side with all the fire. Tell me about that concept and the process to create it.
Well, you think it's an upgrade from the Third Secret?
Yeah, well, it's more defined, right? It's a different concept.
Yeah, it's a different, and some people like the previous artwork. Some people are liking the new artwork. I think it has to do kind of with the perspective, but I think the artwork, I think like on the Third Secret, it was a little bit more art for art's sake. You know what I mean? It was kind of one message in that artwork, and it was great artwork. It was beautifully done. The artwork on this is really not trying to focus, it's really more about the message of the music and the stories. And so I think it's maybe not as artsy as the Third Secret, but it's just designed again to kind of drive home, what the album is about. You know, not so much like, oh, you know, we're trying to like show off amazing art. I mean, that's the way I kind of you know, see it. And this was the second version. We had worked on a slightly different concept with a different artist that was actually a little bit more focused on the actual characters of the story. But it's, you know, we kind of felt like it was maybe getting a little too far, you know, off track. It was maybe some people kind of thought it was a little bit more like a movie, you know.
Okay.
And although you know, you could probably make a movie to this album, we didn't want people to think that they're buying a movie. So we kind of switched artists. This guy Ken has worked with before with Flotsam, and he kind of got the concept right away.
Okay. Very cool. And I think, John, if you can still comment on the music direction, I think Ken alluded to this, but the first album was, you know, it's a classic of power metal. Second one had a little bit of more commercial sensibilities, and I think that had to do with the record label at the time. But in your reunion with The Third Secret and now this album, it seems that the way to go is only getting heavier and heavier as the band progresses, right?
But I think that that's also it's not necessarily on purpose, but I think it really reflects kind of where we're coming. You know, we really, you know, we really like the heavier stuff, and we, you know, because the first album was pretty damn heavy. I mean, think about that album was made today. Think of how heavy it would sound today.
Oh yeah.
With the modern production and everything. And I think that's really where, you know, where our kind of our heart and our soul is, and always has been. And so and of course heavier music seems to be a lot more acceptable at this time, you know, day and age, as opposed to the late 80s. Yes, I mean, you know, we were competing with bands like Whitesnake, Scorpions. You know, that's what you know, people were really into. That's what the record companies were pushing. And so Time Will Tell, even though it's a great album as well, that's where it's kind of that more light, you know, kind of thing happened, because we really didn't we originally, if I remember correctly, and maybe Ken can refresh my memory, but I believe that we kind of wanted to do the second album more like the first one. We were kind of pushed into that. So now, years later, you know, when we made The Third Secret and then this one, obviously the heavier music is much more acceptable. And it's what we do best. We're not a pop band. We don't write love songs.
Of course. Well, Ken, over to you. And I need to ask you also about the idea of the concept album. You mentioned that there's themes and lyrics from the last 3 records. What was the process to put that together and so that it would make sense thematically? And which of those elements came first, the lyrics or the music?
Well, really, the concept came together first, and we had talked about on Third Secret maybe doing a concept record, but we just didn't have time, and it was a, you know, single record, so we really didn't have the space for really a concept record that we were envisioning. But on basically the synopsis for the story appeared first, and so you know, essentially we put together about a 3 or 4 page document talking about what the story was. And I remember when I sent it to John, John goes like, well, you know, it's very complicated. You know, do you have any other ideas? do you have something else we could do? And anyway, it was a complex story, but the idea behind the story, and even in the synopsis, you know, there were song titles listed and lyrics listed from the previous albums that showed how all of this was going to tie together. So I would say that the first thing that came together was the story, and then after that, it was kind of easy because one of the first songs that popped out was "When Angels Kill," and one of the next songs that popped out was "The End of Everything." So it was almost like we had these bookends, and then we just had to figure out, you know, what other songs need to be created to make the story complete. And so, in a sense, I think that having the storyline actually helped us in creating and writing the rest of the music.
Okay, cool. And I can't help but think that, you know, the name of the protagonist has to do where you live. I mean, it's Phoenix, right?
Well, we just thought it was a cool sounding name, but obviously, you know, I live in Phoenix and Steve Carlson lives in Phoenix, but you know, we think it's a cool sounding name for a protagonist. So, but yeah, I'd say that there might have been some influence in where we live. Yes.
Of course. Yeah. And I think back to you, John, speaking of the narrations that tie the story together, there's a part where the Tyrant says, "Divide and conquer, the oldest trick in the book." I mean, not to get too political here again, but isn't it amazing that this strategy still works in this day and age, maybe even more effectively than ever before?
Yeah, it's a little scary. And as Ken was saying, you know, we're not trying to, become political. We're not trying to sway anybody to be, you know, one side political, but at the same time, you know, there's right and there's wrong, you know.
Yeah.
And, you know, obviously, you know, the story of the tyrant, that's obviously not a new story.
Yeah.
It's very unfortunate that in this day and age we're dealing with that situation right now. And obviously Ken, you know, wrote the song, before, you know, the trouble in Europe even started. So it's not like the trouble started and then all of a sudden, oh, okay, you know, we'll write about it. He had already, you know, was writing about it. Now, again, we're leaving that up to the listener. You know, they can apply, you know, the message of the song to whatever situation they see fit.
Yeah, of course. And I think that is masterful of you guys, because whichever side you're on, there's always something to refer to and to relate to in the story.
Well, you know, what's funny is I think that has more to do, you know, the band we've always written about, you know, whether it's the first album or whether it's Third Secret or When Angels Kill or whatever, we've always been writing about the state of mankind. And what's fun, I mean, I guess I was going to say funny, but it's not funny. I think it's maybe sad that the state of mankind has not really changed in the last, you know, like I think the first record was written, I don't know, let's call it 37 years ago or something.
Yeah.
And, you know, you look at where mankind is today and everything we were talking about back then is completely applicable today, which is, you know, kind of a bad thing. You know, I mean, it's really sort of sad, actually.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Well, changing the subject a little bit, I want to talk about the musicians on the album, the other musicians on the album. We have Jim Dafka doing all the guitar harmonies on the When the Angels Kill, in a similar style of the band's first album, right? Tell me the reason why this guy he got involved in the first place.
Well, I actually played on a record with Jim, and he's a fantastic guitar player. And before, I'd like to preface like this whole conversation, because we do have some different personnel on the record. And the best way that I can describe it is, you know, are you familiar with Halloween Pumpkins United, where they had like 4 guitar players and 3 singers and, you know, this family that was, you know, making the music? This was really a situation, you know, we had COVID. We had some guys get injured, like Ed hurt his hand and couldn't play for a while. So we brought in Steve Conley. You know, there was a lot of things going on. Ethan co-wrote some songs, but his schedule was a little bit crazy, and we just couldn't get things to work together. And we had things that were due, and basically we just used a little family of players and writers and musicians to make this record. Like you said, it's a very ambitious record. It's a big record, and there's a lot of components to it. So we just used you know, we kind of just did what we had to do to get it done. But Jim is a fabulous, you know, lead guitar player. But I knew of him previously, and he was available, and we were also wanting to, like you said, sort of harken back to our first album, like harken back to that kind of sound. And that was something we wanted the guitar solos to almost be an orchestra on their own. Like if you listen to those guitar solos without any music or without anything going on, they're almost orchestration pieces where you could listen to and you'd hear all these different harmonies and all these parts weaving in and out. And we just think that Jim did a fantastic job of that.
Yeah, awesome indeed. Yeah. And John, the band came back to life after the Keep It True Festival in 2010 and again in 2017. I know that in 2010 there were talks of doing an album, but it never happened. What was different in 2017 that enabled you guys to do the Third Secret and continue with the band?
Sure, couple of things. So yes, after the surprise show in 2010, we then kind of, because before that we really, you know, everybody was off doing different things. A lot, you know, some of us not even playing music at all. After we came back from doing that show, we kind of realized, oh shit, we still have some fans out there, and you know, maybe we can, you know, make another record. You know, but at that time, Ken was not involved in the band, which was a big part of it. Ted was also not a part of it, although he originally was going to do that festival, but then he kind of bailed at the last minute. So we really only, at that time, it was really only the three of us, you know, Kendall, Ed, and myself. And you know, we did try to do some things. We did some demos with a couple of different singers, and it wasn't received well. So then we thought, well, we'll just kind of put it on the shelf for the time being, and maybe the situation might improve, which it did. So then in 2017, we went back to, at that point though, Ken, of course, Ted never, you know, came into the fold, unfortunately. But at that point, Ken came back into the band, and I think that's what really made the difference. Is you know, having him, because he's such a tremendous, you know, not only is a great drummer, and I don't even think that's his best quality. I think honestly his best attribute is his songwriting. He's an amazing songwriter. And so when Ken came back into the fold, that really kind of gave the band, you know, the push that we needed to be successful. And then we kind of got a second shot at doing a record from Nuclear Blast. And after that show, they said, hey, give us some demos. So we did some demos, and then they said, fine, let's do a record. And that's really where the ball started rolling.
Awesome. I don't know if you guys saw a movie called I'm Too Old for This Shit. It's a documentary of a band that also is invited to do the Keep It True Festival, and they need to kind of pick up the pieces of the band, of the lineup of the old days. It's a band called Siren. I don't know if you saw that one.
Yeah, I haven't seen the movie, but I do know the band. They're a Florida band, actually.
Yeah, they're thrash metal kind of, you know. Yeah, they're really, really cool guys, and there's a parallel with the Fifth Angel story. I just wanted to mention that, but
okay, cool.
Yeah, and well, you guys played a few festivals in 2019, and the intention, I know it was to tour more in 2020. Do you guys think now is a good time to have more ambitious plans in terms of touring, even though it's insanely expensive right now? Or
you want to say that, John?
No, I'll let you field this question.
Well, I think touring, you're right, it has become very expensive, and there's a lot of bands, there's many bands that have had to cancel just because of the costs.
Yeah,
And it is unfortunate. I mean, it really is a big factor because, just plane flights alone, I mean, by the time you put 5 guys on a plane and you fly them over to Europe now, it's, $8,000 by the
yeah,
time with your bag and everything. So the minute you step off the plane, you're $8,000 in the hole. That's a lot of merchandise to sell. So,
yeah, yeah,
and then the other challenge is, on the other end, the techs, the transportation, the hotels, all of that have in some cases doubled. So it's difficult to say the least. It's very difficult. So I mean, we're certainly hopeful that touring will become more practical in the future, but it is a difficult thing right now for not only Fifth Angel but for many bands. And I know that you guys certainly know of a high number of bands that have had to cancel for those reasons. So
yeah.
if you're asking me if it's a good time to tour, I mean, it's always a good time to tour when you have product in the marketplace, and we certainly would love to do that. And we're gonna have to see if that's going to be possible.
Yeah, yeah, it's challenging for sure. And I've noticed bands kind of adapting to the new era and putting together a set list based on Spotify views and associating themselves with TikTokers or YouTubers because of the number of followers. So they need to adapt, that's for sure. It's a challenging environment. Yeah. Yeah. And but back to the album, let me ask you guys about the vocals. Steve does such an amazing job throughout the album. With that said, I did like the previous one a lot with Kendall on vocals. I know he left in 2019. Could he have continued in any way, in any capacity, or?
Well, certainly Kendall, is a huge talent. There's no question about that. He's a tremendous guitar player, tremendous singer, and when he left, it took like 3 guys to replace him. so so
Yeah,
uh so yeah, it was quite, what a talented guy. He's fabulously talented, but he did, he basically told us, I don't want to tour, I don't want to travel. It's very uncomfortable for me to travel. He didn't like the food, the different restrictions.
right.
It's tough to find good food on the road, and just all of those factors. So, and that was back, I think, in wasn't that 2018, John? That
Um,
record came
yeah,
out.
at the end of 2018, beginning of 2019.
Yeah,
Um,
and we had Steve Carlson in at that point. He was going to be
Mhm.
singing all of the songs that Ted sang, and then Kendall was going to sing a few of the new songs because we had shows booked and all of that. And Kendall's just like, hey, I just don't want to do that. So it did throw a wrench into into the plans that we had. It was very odd timing. It was very weird.
Yeah,
We just had an album come out, and then like it would have been nice to know that maybe before. But it's things happen, and Steve was there. And fortunately, Steve's been working with us for what is that, 5 years now, and people
yeah,
are all saying, well, he's the new vocalist. Well, yeah, he's new, but I guess 5 years new. So
yeah.
anyway, yeah, I think Steve did a fantastic job on the record. We couldn't have asked for anything more. I mean, tremendous emotion, tremendous tone. He's a great live performer. I think he really brought an energy to the videos. I think you really can't say enough about him. I think he did a fantastic job.
Yeah, I saw a video of, I think it was the Rock Palace Festival, where he does such a great job on the old material as well, but he absolutely shines on When Angels Kill. That's my take anyway. I don't know if you guys have a favorite vocal moment on the album. My favorites are Empire of Hate and Blighted and Bleeding.
yeah, great songs.
Wouldn't,
Yeah,
yeah, I think those are great choices. I mean, I think that, there's so many, I mean, for us, I think there's so many songs that we really love on this record. And that was, we tried to do that. We try to do that with every record that we make. We always try to make sure that we are moved by the music, and it's a song that we love. And then hopefully, 5 million people will agree with you.
yeah.
So,
Fingers
but
crossed.
as
Yeah,
far as saying which vocal performances are the best, I tend to agree that. Well, I mean, there's great stuff on Seven Angels. There's great stuff on When Angels Kill. The End of Everything has some great stuff. So I mean, there's so
yeah,
many songs where I think he does a fantastic job. I think overall he did a really super job on this record.
Yeah. And I think to end up and wrap it up, all the album, Light the Sky ends it in a bombastic fashion. It's almost like you guys wanted to sum everything on the last track. Bombastic solos, in-your-face drumming, soaring vocals, and the world ends up in flames.
Yeah, I think that song, yeah, Jim, he really hit the mark as far as capturing the James Bird, solos on that particular song. He really nailed it. I think for me, all of the solos, that one to me sounds the closest to like the first album stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
Very
And
Way that was John's song. That was his music that was brought in for that track, and I just wanted to point that out because I think that is a track that kind of sums everything up, and John did a great job of bringing in that music. It was great.
I didn't even like it. I was like, I don't want to use this idea. Ken says, he goes, you just wait.
yeah,
That's where because I would write. Unfortunately, I don't consider myself a complete songwriter because I can't write lyrics and vocal melodies. I draw a blank, but I'm very good at composing music. So I will. So kind of one of the processes where I would have these musical ideas, down, and then I'd send them to Ken. I'd be like, well, do you think that this will fit, into the new album? And then Ken said, he goes, just send me everything. I'm like, okay. So I would just send him, all these, ideas. Some of the ideas were new. Some of them were a number of years old. And Light the Sky was one of my older ideas that I wrote quite a while ago.
right.
And Ken he goes, yeah, I can use this. And I'm like, I don't know. I was like a Debbie Downer on that song. And then, and he's like, you wait till it's finished.
Well, I'm glad he was able to persuade you and to change and morph it into a full track. Yeah,
that's what he does. He's really good at that. It's like I'll send him these ideas, and it's like it's like a deck of cards, and he takes and he shuffles everything around, like what I was hearing as the verse part, he hears as the chorus.
mm-hmm.
It worked, but it works really well.
Yeah, it does. Well, there's a sense of completion when you reach the end of the album. Yeah, that's for sure. Yeah. And last question for me. I don't know who wants to take that one, but altogether, the album has about 70 minutes of music, but to me, it goes by rather quickly. Do you guys think eventually we could get a live set when it's played in full?
Well, I guess that'll be something we'll have to wait and see. Time will tell.
Literally, yeah.
But I will tell you this: at 70 minutes, I mean, it would be a very difficult set because it's a pretty shredding. For the most part, the record's pretty aggressive. It would probably be a difficult set, but I would say it's not impossible. I mean, if the demand was there, we absolutely would do that. That's what John wants to do. He's like, hey, I want to play the new stuff. And I think the challenge is, we have so many fans from back in the day that want to hear, the old stuff as well. So, if the occasion presented itself and we were able to play the whole album, I think that would be quite a show, actually.
Yeah. But we'd have to do it right. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We would, if we were going to, it would have to really become more of like a production, as opposed to we're just playing them like a regular set. I mean, if we were really able to do it where we could add some theater, where we would have maybe some actors doing the parts in between.
Wow.
I mean, I mean, do it right. And then have, like Halloween, they have all this stuff going on, the video screen. I think if it was done under those kind of circumstances, I think it would be probably pretty darn cool. But of course, that's a large, budget production. to do something like that.
Yeah. Well, my light bulb moment here says I should crowdfund this thing. Maybe we should talk offline later today. But yeah,
That's a great idea.
yeah. Why not? Well, those were my questions, guys. Before I let you go, I should say something to our viewers. We have done interviews with John and Ken before when the third secret came out. I'll leave the links in the description of the video. But thank you guys for the interview. I keep my fingers crossed that eventually I'll see you guys live here in Canada where I'm sitting. So yeah, and all the best with the new album.
Thanks, Rodrigo. Awesome talking to you again.
Likewise. Yeah.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.